morning, everyone. I'm Bob Rohrlack, President and CEO at the Tampa Bay Chamber. Thank you for joining us today. First and foremost, we hope everyone is safe and healthy and learning to adjust to these interesting times we're all working through. Today, we have a webinar focused on how businesses can maintain and build their strong brand with the actions of their organization. We know that many organizations have had to close temporarily without an estimate of a reopen date. So we're hoping that today can provide some resources, tips, and most of all, provide hope as you network with people in the Tampa Bay community that want to help. Today is April 30th. Yesterday, the governor announced some phase 1 reopening, so we'll start to see some things opening up, and local government is discussing how to coordinate with those plans. So hopefully we're at the very beginning of starting to get back to normal life as we all know it. We put today together's webinar in cooperation with our Memorandum of Understanding partners that we work with to have a strong commerce base here in Tampa Bay area. Those organizations are the Greater Brandon Chamber, the Greater Plant City Chamber, the Greater Riverview Chamber, the Indo-US Chamber, the North Tampa Bay Chamber, the South Tampa Chamber, the Tampa Bay LGBT Chamber, the Tampa Downtown Partnership, the Uptown Chamber, the West Shore Alliance, and the Ybor Chamber. And thank you to our partners for participating with us here today. Today's event has 4 panelists that I will introduce, then we'll get straight into the questions. The first is David Capece, CEO of Sparxoo. David is the fearless leader of Sparxoo, an award-winning digital agency. David has more than 20 years of strategic marketing and brand experience, including leadership with ESPN and Interbrand. David has led branding and strategy projects with Dr. Pepper, Snapple, JP Morgan Chase, the Cosmopolitan Las Vegas, Habitat for Humanity, Comcast, and NBC. He has also served as an adjunct marketing professor at the University of Tampa. Next up is Travis Claytor of TC Strategic Communications. For nearly 20 years, Travis has developed and executed national and international integrated strategic communications plans around some of the world's top media events, including the NFL Super Bowl, the Republican National Convention. He also led the international launch of theme park attractions, promoted destinations to global audiences, and developed communication campaigns. After nearly 2 decades of developing and executing public relations campaigns, Travis launched TC Strategic Communications, which combines a passion for strategic solutions and integrated communications to engage audiences and produce real business results. Next, we have Cords Owen, CEO and founder of Bake More Pies. Cords brings his broad base of experience and proven track record of success to a select group of growing organizations who are looking for cutting-edge and innovative strategies to outpace the competition. He specializes in growing businesses by developing web solutions coupled with result-driven online advertising campaigns. Prior to starting Bake More Pies, Cords served in executive roles at 2 of the largest Tampa-based marketing agencies, where he led teams delivering custom digital and marketing solutions to a diverse set of clients that ranged from startup to Fortune 100 companies and governments. Next joining us is Christine Turner, Executive Vice President of ChappellRoberts. Christine has spent her career developing creative advertising and marketing programs that drive results for her clients and agency. Her wide-ranging experience in advertising and branding has served her and the agency well for over 20 years. Christine has infused the agency with a passion for collaboration while honing her talent for balancing brand alignment and effective growth strategies. Her acumen in consumer and B2B marketing for the financial service and technology sectors has garnered her many awards on the regional, national, and international stage. Thank you all for being here with us today. We're really glad to have your expertise for our viewers to learn these strategies. Now let's get straight to our questions. First, we're going to start with the topic of crisis communications, something we've all had to deal with at these times. How should organizations be communicating with the community right now? Christine, why don't you start?
Sure. Right now, it's more important than ever for organizations to be empathetic and sympathetic to what their audiences are going through without pandering, without really having this tone of corporate greed. So you have to be understanding of the situation. You have to offer opportunity. You have to offer, realistic information to these audiences to help them through these times. Crisis situations are very different, and your consumers are looking for information from those long-time brand loyalists. There was a spot the other day, just to give it a little bit of context, something funny that I saw that said, it's amazing how many commercials have gone from buy this car to these are uncertain, buy this car. So that's a tone deaf way, and something that you would want to adjust in the way that you're communicating to your audiences. It really has to be authentic. It really has to be sympathetic, and you have to offer opportunity, problem solving, really now more than ever.
Yeah, if I could just build on that for a second, Bob, and I completely agree with everything Christine's saying. And the way that I've been describing it to clients and colleagues is you have to focus on conversation over conversion right now with everything that you're doing. You can't be selling to people right now because they don't want to be sold to. They want to be communicated with. They want a dialogue, and they want you to understand what their expectations are, and then they want you to meet those expectations. Those expectations right now aren't try and sell me a product. They want to feel connected to people. And so I think brands have an obligation right now to meet those expectations. And then they have an opportunity to engage these, what either were consumers or clients, or even could be potential consumers or clients in the future, and engage them right now in a very meaningful and authentic way. And the thing that I try and remind people is if you can create a supporter right now, they will likely be a consumer or a client following this crisis.
I think that's a good strategy. Good advice. Okay, our next question. Who should businesses be communicating with? Which audiences are crucial right now? It kind of builds on what you said. Travis, why don't you start with that, and then David follow up?
Sure. Yeah. It's going to depend on business to business and who you've been communicating with already. The basic rule of thumb that I've been telling everybody is focus on your base and shore your base up and then expand from there. But whatever you do, be consistent with it. So if you were communicating across your social media channels before in a certain way or a certain frequency, make sure that you continue doing that, because those are the bases that are going to continue to expect that kind of communication. Now, your approach may change and needs to change, as we just talked about, that conversation over conversion. But you need to continue to be consistent in how you're communicating with them. And then as you're going along, you can look for these new audiences, because everybody right now they're ready to consume more information. They're stuck at home, they're quarantined, they're on their computers, they're on their social media channels. So there are a bunch of audiences out there. So once you make sure that you shore up your base, look for those new audiences. But again, like we just talked about, it needs to be done in a meaningful and authentic and genuine kind of way. And please, and beyond, above everything else, realize that there are internal stakeholders in audience as well as external stakeholders in audiences. And a lot of the times the internal, your employees, they get kind of passed over, not because you want to pass them over, but because you're consistently worried about how do I communicate with my consumers and the people that are going to buy my product. Well, you need your internal audiences to run the ship. So you really need to take both of those things into consideration when you're planning.
Good. David?
Thanks, Travis. And I'm just going to build on what you've shared. So in terms of building on your base and the internal audiences, they always say strong brands are built from the inside out, and it works no differently in a crisis. So as you say, start with your base, but even the inside. So the first audience is the internal audience, and really helping them move from panic to purpose, and then to move to your next ring, which is your existing customers, really strengthening those relationships and ensuring that you've kind of battened down the hatches on keeping your existing customers happy and promoting you. Then, as you say, Travis, you can move to the next ring, which would be those bullseye prospects where you think that they're the most likely to join your brand or your product, once the macro conditions return. And then from there, of course, being engaged in the community as is authentic to your brand, so that you can build goodwill, engage and have continued visibility throughout the crisis.
Yeah, this is an interesting time in crisis communications, right? Typically, when the crisis hits, it's either something unique to your industry or to your company. Well, this crisis is hitting everybody. So it's how we all empathize and work through this together. So that's great advice. Our next question, not every organization has a marketing or communications department. We've been talking a lot about the needs and the impact to small business. What can a business owner be doing to ensure brand trust? And Cords, why don't you lead us off with that one?
Sure. I think the first thing you want to do is to just, the way you check the temperature of what you're about to do is whether or not you're being helpful to the situation, right? So what are the resources that you have as a business where you can apply those to people who need them right now, who may be struggling? And I think that's a great way to kind of add to the positivity of what could be the outcome of the whole situation.
Bob, can I give a shout out to somebody that's doing that great, that's a chamber member, is Three Daughters Brewing. And, their business model, with their in the hospitality and service industry, and they quit brewing beer and started making hand sanitizer. They shifted their operating model and their communication model to be of service to their community. And that's been a great way, without paid media, without, a big budget to work with, that they've really been just doing the right thing. And they've been getting a lot of positive attention for it within the organizations they belong to, but also the media, because they are doing something for this global pandemic that's affecting everybody.
And
go ahead, David.
Sorry.
I was just going to
David, then Travis.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, as both Cords and Christina shared, it's really about helping others, but also adding value and recognizing that right now marketing is tied to product, it's tied to sales, it's tied to everything that you're doing. And so it may not just simply be marketing in the sense of, sending out mass advertising and things like that. It may be fundamentally understanding how your customers in the market have shifted, and then changing your product with agility, and then quickly getting the message out there to others, and delivering that across ways that you may be completely new to you. All during that, though, I would say that what I am finding is that the one-to-one connections are as or more valuable than ever. So don't think that just because you're remote you can't replicate the coffee chat or a sales meeting or a networking meeting or something like that. There are many people who have availability or interest in connecting one-to-one with others. So I think just having that as part of the sales and marketing conversation as well.
Good. Travis?
Yeah, I was just gonna, to build on all of that. I think the conversation is around what value can you bring, and I think David just kind of mentioned that word value. Everybody has value, no matter if you're a small organization, a large organization, somewhere in the middle, what you do, what your service or product is. Everybody has value that they can bring, and Three Daughters Brewing is a great example of how, you can shift your operation model, you can shift what you do to bring additional value. But even the little things can bring value, like David was saying, the one-on-one connections, or just reaching out to your audiences to provide information or communicate with them. So many people are looking to connect right now. They just want to feel connected. So regardless of who you are, what your company is, find ways to bring value to all of your audiences and ensure that you have that people-first communications approach by bringing value to them.
Good, very good. All right, now let's move on to
I would like
do you
to
have something? Go ahead.
Absolutely. Well, I think another great example is what the Chamber's been doing for the last couple of weeks, right? With these presentations themselves, right? You guys adjusted quickly. You're able to pull this together. And because you're bringing in experts into this situation, we're all prepared, you know, and everybody else in your previous talks prepared to talk about these things that are happening right now and provide value out of the chamber base. So kudos to you guys.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We have a phenomenal team that we work with and getting great strategies to put all this together. So thank you for saying that. Okay, let's move on to media relations. How should we plan to engage the media with the media consumption changing so drastically since the coronavirus issues took hold? Travis, can you start with that one?
Yeah, it's a tough question. It's a difficult area to navigate right now. Media relations is evolving super quick, and one thing that we've seen is the shotgun approach doesn't work anymore with media relations. But the good news is that the shotgun approach really shouldn't have been working for a while. So this has just expedited the process. And when you're engaging media now, you really, just like with your audiences, you need to focus on what you can bring and value and fostering relationships with specific journalists over, let me blast out my press release or my media alert. I think you really need to focus much more heavily now on understanding who you're talking to as a journalist, what their motivations are. Some journalists right now are very much consumed with COVID-19 and coronavirus. Others are not. And so there are opportunities to engage media outside of this crisis. But again, you have to do it very strategically, very methodically, and focus on those relationships and bringing as much value as you're getting out of it.
Very good. Anybody else on that one? Okay. Is the event appropriate to pitch non-COVID related stories to the media right now? Is it time to start trying to get that kind of coverage going on?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in on that one too. Yes, and now you have to be, again, very strategic and very cautious when you want to push a non-COVID. And to be clear, even on a COVID story front, you want to focus on positivity. You want to focus on how you're helping the situation to ensure that you're protecting your brand. Again, you want to bring value and enhance people's lives in some way, shape, or form. But outside of that, there is plenty of room right now for positive stories, and there are coalitions and groups of journalists across the country, including a group at the Tampa Bay Times in Tampa that is focused on positive news stories. There's a crew at the Tampa Bay Times. They are out there looking for positive news stories. So there are opportunities. You have to be careful not to be tone deaf when you're approaching some of these stories, but it is possible. But you do need to, I'll go back to what we were just talking about, of understanding who you're talking to, who the reporters are, what their motivations, what their interests are, and tying those interests together with a positive news story that's helping the community.
Good.
I'll give you a funny story for anybody that's listening and might be earlier in their career and understanding, you know, how this actually unfolds. So it was probably 20 years ago, and we were working with a national insurance organization. And they were launching a new service line in Florida. And so it was my job to call up all these business reporters and see if they found that to be interesting. And I think the second or third one I actually got live, he said, do you realize that it was hurricane season? There was a hurricane coming to Florida. So here I am in the middle of a crisis trying to say, this XYZ insurance company is launching a brand new service. Aren't you so interested in that? And I think he was graceful enough not to actually hang up on me, but give me this jewel of wisdom to take forward into my career, where he says, call me back when there's not a hurricane happening. So I really think that, you know, to Travis's point, you can't be tone deaf. And that's kind of what that looks like, is me trying to sell a brand new self-indulgent service for this national insurance organization when everybody's trying to hunker down and prepare for a hurricane on the Gulf Coast of Florida.
Yeah, and that's amazing. We've all had those moments early in our career, Christine. And really, media relations in general, we've moved past this trying to sell something. You shouldn't be selling anything or trying to pitch just your business. There should be a story that you are trying to communicate with media, just like you would be communicating with consumers. You know, I try and think of media just as another subset of your audience base. You need to tell them a story. Yes, you're going to help them you're going to help them help you by telling your story, but it can't be focused on, again, conversion. It needs to be focused on conversation and telling stories and giving meaningful information for people to consume.
Okay, good. Our next question. If the relevancy of media relations in terms of getting your news out is decreasing, where should companies focus right now? David, can you take that one?
Yeah, and I'm going to build off of what Travis just shared in terms of the storytelling and the positivity. So if you can't take that storytelling and positivity to the media, or if it's not really the right opportunity, what we are seeing is that you can take that to social media. So everybody knows that there are a lot of hours in the day that are being used on social media, video, things like that. And so the stat is that social usage is up over 50%. Social is an own channel where you can control the message. You can share your story, your positivity, tell the brand the way you want to tell the brand. So if you weren't doing social as well as you wanted to before, now's really the opportunity, because there's 50% more demand on it. And then along with that, we're in a world where everyone is disrupted. So not everyone out there has increased their focus of their brand 50% on social. So there may be an opportunity for you to do things that your peers or competitors are not. Beyond that, I would continue to go down the owned media channel. So things like your website is an asset that you control. And again, similarly, website traffic seems to be up across the board. Things like email marketing, another owned channel. So if earned media and media relations isn't right for you, there's a lot that you can do on owned media, especially in digital.
Yeah. If I can just build on that for a quick second too, Bob. Media relations is absolutely evolving, and it isn't for everybody. David's absolutely right. But I think as it's evolving, this is an opportunity for everybody to think very strategically and in a very integrated fashion. And what I mean by that is, let's say media relations is for you, or you want to pitch a story or work with a journalist on a COVID or non-COVID related story. That landscape has shifted, and digital is the way that people are operating now. TV stations are operating digitally, remotely. Newspapers are doing the same thing, and a lot of that is likely to stick around into the future. So this is an opportunity for us to think through, okay, how do we leverage something like that? So if we get a news story that hits, how do we use that across our owned channels, across our website for additional content and storytelling, which then leads into how do we tell that across our social media channels, which then leads into maybe we can put some money behind paid advertising. So it's all very much linked together. And again, I think this crisis is, we're just seeing an expedited evolution of a lot of this, and forcing us to think through how do we make the most out of this quick evolution for the benefit of the community as well as our businesses.
And I'll add on to that. As you see information coming out, a great example, the governor's office rolled out the governor's executive order on starting to ease getting back to phase 1 on what we can do for business. I probably had that exact order forwarded to me by, no kidding, 10 other people. I said, trust me, we get the governor's announcements, I know. So when you're thinking of automatically forwarding, think maybe could other people be getting it, and don't bomb people with things they're already getting in there too. So strategically, like you said, strategically communicating wins the day. Being fast isn't always the best. Being the informative is best.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry, go ahead, Courts.
Well, I just wanted to jump in and give a couple relevant examples of where some big brands have taken this opportunity to help foster what everybody's looking for. There's a lot more kids at home with their parents right now, right? And so they came out with a campaign for during Easter, where they're doing the Great Bunny Hunt. And so on Instagram, they're in David's own channels, comments. So basically what they're doing is they're having these like Where's Waldo type activities that parents can do with their kids during this time and really help connect them. And that's a great example of how, so monitoring social media, there's a lot of trends that are coming out right now. It's a great place for these bigger brands or smaller brands to kind of look for ways where they can be a part of the conversation, because there's trends that are happening based off of some major behavioral changes that we're seeing in the data.
Good, okay. Next question. Christine, media rates have gone down significantly. What would you recommend to those that are interested in advertising or doing social media boosts with this change?
It's a great time. Really it is. And, you know, we're seeing for a lot of clients, number one, so strategies have had to change. So, you know, you might have had to reshift where you're spending your media dollars. You might want to invest in other places, but it's a great time to keep spending because the rates are down. Facebook, you're getting a lot of CPM right now. So you're getting a lot for your money. And the same is happening with TV. So in our paid media department, you know, they're reporting that TV ad rates are down despite the fact that TV viewership is up. So we're getting a lot of the great, we're getting a lot of spots in the great viewership audiences, early morning news. I mean, people are tuning into that early morning news now, getting the recap on the day, what's expected to happen. And we're really getting great pricing and great rates for some of those things. You know, it was an industry that was hit hard with the cancellation of all those sporting events back in March and the end of hockey and basketball and Final Four and things like that. And we're getting good rates. And it is proven in research that dates back even over 100 years that brands that continue to advertise through a down economy are going to come out and be stronger, have more brand awareness, and look like a more reliable and stable company. So my recommendation to media rates and any paid media strategy right now is to rework your strategy, but definitely don't turn it off.
Good. Okay. Very good. Next question. For those small businesses who don't have a marketing or an advertising company, but want to tiptoe into the advertising to push their message out, what advice would you give them? Christine, you're saying get out there, try to rethink your strategy. Anything else you want to add on that?
I think, you know, if somebody hasn't typically historically been an advertiser, I think social is the way to start. You know, there's a lot you can get, you can be very nimble in digital. You can test what messages are working well in digital, and you can really be where your users are and get very personalized in that channel. So I would start there versus thinking that you need a spot on the Today Show if you're new to advertising. I think you can, depending on what type of business, if you're a B2B business, LinkedIn works really well, you know, and there's a lot that you can do there. If you are a consumer brand, you know, you might want to look at Instagram and Facebook. And I think I would start with some of those digital strategies. And David could probably add on to that too.
Yeah, David, anything on that?
Christine, I think you've nailed the last two questions, and so absolutely right. Now is a great time to be advertising if your budgets permit, because you're going to get more exposure, more impressions. There's less noise out there from your competitors, and so then how I would think about it is, where do you want to focus on the funnel, right? So, right, if you want to go broad for awareness, you may actually be able to get more impressions and more breadth than would be normal. And so, if that's a strategy that could work for you, you might be able to really jump out ahead of the competition and start the funnel bigger and broader for when we do return. Not every business can do that right now, because some businesses don't have the luxury of investing in the future. You can also, though, kind of go a little lower down the funnel, and especially through targeted campaigns, even account-based campaigns on LinkedIn or other social campaigns. You can, with smaller budgets, be able to dip your toes in, see the results and the data really quickly, and then decide how you want to move from there. So I think either way, I think just doing something to get started if your budgets permit is definitely something to think about.
So start into the communication advertising realm. Don't think you got to go from zero to a Super Bowl ad. Just work your budget the way it makes sense for you. Okay.
Well, and then just if you don't mind, to add on that just for a second, from a content standpoint, I think it's important to note you don't need a huge ad for your social media channels. There are plenty of options out there for the content that you're already creating to try and reach additional audiences. So as you're focusing on that authentic message that you're getting out there, or that photo that you're posting of your team working or remotely, or whatever it may be, whatever that value proposition is that you're bringing to your audiences, there are ways to boost those posts or enhance those posts to reach additional audiences. So advertising doesn't necessarily mean I need a TV ad or I need an agency to create this digital ad for me. There are ways to do that with the content that you're already creating on an organic front. So keep that in mind.
Good. And that leads us into our next area we want to talk about, which is content. And you talked about the kind of content an organization should be creating for their social media. But what else should they be thinking about as they're trying to figure out what's the right way to get their brand and keep their communication strategy going out there? Christine, what else do you think people should do?
I think in the social channels, it's a good time. People want to connect with people, and you need to understand what your brand's kind of tone is and personality. I think it's a good time to showcase what makes you different, what makes you fun, versus, again, going back to some of those comments we made at the top of the call about being a feature-driven or product-driven. It really is a time to lean into the storytelling, show off your personality and your humanity as a brand. I think that what we're seeing, the research that Edelman had some research coming back that said people don't necessarily expect brands and advertisers to go quiet, but they do want to know what are you doing to help? How are you engaging people? How are you informing them? And how are you responding to the situation that we're in? A lot of people have changed their strategies to, let's say you were a consumer brand like Domino's. One of the things that they cited was Domino's had a big strategy where, it's a pizza party, and here's how, our product enhances lives. And now what they've done is shifted their communication strategy to show how they are actually providing that service, but doing it in a safe and sanitary and social distancing kind of way. So I think some of these stories, brand personality, fun, but also how you're protecting your audiences that you're trying to connect with, and adhering to the guidelines while also understanding that people have to eat. Some people do still have to buy cars, get your roof done. So people are really understanding how you're operating in the context of this pandemic.
If I could just,
Go ahead, David, then Travis.
If I could just add to it, of course, over the past 2 months, marketing budgets, a lot of places have been cut, but even just way of observation with our agency, the two areas of our business that have had the most strength are content and then website. And I think the reason is because at this point, what you have is your content to offer to others to provide value, either in the sense of stories and positivity, or even education and training. And then what I would observe behind the scenes is that just like media may be available at this point a little bit less expensively than in the past, it may be a little bit lower cost to create content right now as well. So really thinking that you may be able to get more robust content for similar or smaller budgets, and recognizing that the market has shifted. So this can be a higher impact vehicle.
Good. Travis, did you want to add something on that?
Yeah, just real quick. There are a lot of things you can do with your content, a lot of different avenues you can go down. And I agree with what everybody's saying. And I always boil it back down to two things for people. And the first is be consistent with your brand, be consistent with what you've been doing, which leads into the second. And that is understand what the expectations are of your audiences and meet them. So if you are consistent with your brand and you meet the expectations of your audiences with your content, you're going to be in good shape.
Good. All right. Now, Courts, video is still vital to marketing and communication efforts, but with social distancing, creating video is much more difficult. What advice do you have for companies on creating video content in this new setting?
Yeah, well, David even hit on it. Some of the content creation opportunities are more affordable now because the industry is a little bit depressed. Like here's an example of how, you can still go out and capture video. You see this gentleman right here is wearing a mask to be safe, standing far back using telephoto lenses. You can do things with smaller crews. Those are some of the things you can do. We've seen some major shifts in video. If you look at a lot of the macro trends and what's happening in the internet right now, audio has actually gone down and video usage has actually gone way up, especially on bigger screens. And I'll show you some data in a few minutes on that one when we get farther down the questions. But absolutely, video is 100% the tactic you should be using to connect with your community, your employees, and the rest of the stakeholders that are part of your product mix, because you can look them in the eyes, you can be authentic, you can actually portray and communicate your true feelings and be empathetic way better than any other strategy. And actually, it's a lot easier to do once you get past that barrier of some people are stuck, especially small businesses, and initially creating some video for the first time. But it's a wonderful strategy to communicate with your customers.
And
There's more opportunities now than ever.
I just want to build on that. I think Coors has
Go
it
ahead, Dave.
exactly right. And Coors, I hope I don't steal some of your thunder, but if social usage is up 50%, video usage is actually up 60%. And if you think about what's happening in the world, the supply of new video has plummeted, right? Whether it be, Hollywood or even companies and brands. So there is 60% more demand and significantly less supply. So if you can get some speed to market, there's a huge opportunity on video. Then exactly to Core's point, the video is available cheaper at this point because the people haven't figured out what to do in an era where you really it's quite challenging to produce the way that we used to produce. And so what we've been doing is just getting really creative and even recognizing that in a moment like this, Bob, you of course have the best backdrop of us all. I probably have the worst, but in people recognize that it's acceptable, and so even having ways of letting people film themselves on iPhones, things like that, but then doing a little bit of legwork so that when you edit and bring it in, you put it in a nice set of motion graphics and a nice graphics package so that it sort of just like gets it a little bit more professional. So something like that you're able to do more. You're able to do inexpensively relative to a full-on production. Animated explainers, animations, things like that are able to carry the message in unique and interesting ways. So I think maybe I'll turn this back over to Coors to carry it home.
Coors is on display.
Sure. So like, for example, I was talking to a large production company yesterday, and while their events have been canceled, they've had a huge spike in requests for virtual conferencing and things like that. So they were uniquely positioned because they'd been doing virtual for quite a while. And so it's the bigger brands. We've actually had a couple of inquiries from large companies that were like, hey, we've got this meeting. Normally we're in person, but we need to actually have a show for this presentation, and we want to produce it and make it look like a TV show over a Zoom call. And so this is a small example of what that looks like, but there's a huge shift in how people are doing things. So yeah, big buy videos. It's time to buy video for sure.
Bob, can I make one comment on
Sure,
that?
please.
So I agree with everything, and kind of tying the video back to media relations, I can tell you that we've had lots of success filming video with this thing here, and closing down a nightly news segment that we've shot our own for our clients have shot, or we've shot for them on an iPhone, edited it and sent it in. News crews and those people are short-staffed, and if you've got something interesting, especially the good news stories that you might want to be talking about with your brand or an event or something that's happening, shoot it yourself and edit it in the iMovie. And we've had success sending that in to broadcast news to close down a newscast. And I can say that, just make sure you use it wide way versus vertical for the news. And that self-generating content is another way to use video and get it published too.
Yeah, and Christina, you hit on a great point that the expectation of produced pieces has gone way down. That isn't the expectation, nor is it what people want to consume. They want to consume much more genuine content. That's a trend we've been seeing for quite some time. So, and that's the reason why these platforms are so popular and these things go, quote unquote, go viral. And then just to add one more thing, there are, and I think David made this point and Coors made this point, that video services are becoming cheaper, much more accessible. And with people wanting to consume video more often, there are even websites out there that create video for you, and you can go in and edit, and it's super user friendly. I would always recommend you use a professional if you can, but for those who don't have the budget, there are still ways that you can, and services and platforms you can use to help create video elements out of written word that will get your content much further, much quicker, and much more engagement.
Very good. Okay, now we're going to move on to forward thinking. As we have been working to do in every webinar we have produced, we started with here's the legislation that's coming, get ready. Here's the legislation that's about to be, you're going to apply for the programs, get ready. We had some very successful entrepreneurs talking about how do you prepare for when the gates open back up and we're all back being competitive in business. Get ready. So now forward thinking on branding and communication. That's kind of been the theme of this whole discussion. David, how do organizations start thinking in the long term right now with their communication strategy?
Yeah, great.
Beyond this.
So first off, we all should be humble enough to recognize that we don't have crystal balls into 2021 and beyond. So I think it's then recognizing what are the assets that and brand initiatives that we can take on that we know will deliver value to us in the long run. And so those are things like working on your brand foundations, working on your website, working on building the awareness across the groups that you know you're going to want to bring into your customer base in the future. And so essentially it's making those investments where you know there's going to be a long-term return, but you just don't know when the return is going to happen. Even things like SEO, which really had fallen out of favor for a couple of years, we're starting to see SEO come back as a priority, because if you're building content for the future and you can work on the SEO now, you are making the bet that when things come back, you will have earned some of that SEO, which usually is a minimum of 6 to 12 months before you start seeing impact. And because the timelines are uncertain, you may have the that way of thinking about putting in the work now to be rewarded later.
Good. Christine, anything you want to add on that forward thinking?
Yeah. So, it would be wrong to think I can plan for when things normalize, because I don't know that anybody that we're working with sees anything returning to quote normal anytime soon. So what we're seeing our clients do right now is long-term planning into 2021, knowing that things are going to change. So what are the first things people are doing? They're reprioritizing. What are the business goals going to be as a result of the environment we're working on now? How has my business shifted, and where do I want to invest? What are our new business goals? And then marketing and brand and advertising goals usually align with that new business strategy. So we're seeing a lot of long-term planning focusing on here's everything we want to do. And when you're coming out of a slump, you do want to think everything's important, but there is a need to prioritize. Number two thing that people are doing and clients are doing as it relates to long-term planning is looking at how then do I employ strategies that build trust, that understand that we can be the service provider, the organization that is that sort of first out there and building trust with the consumers and the audiences that we're looking to connect with. And then the last thing really is looking at those delivery channels and how things have changed. We have real estate, healthcare, events, marketing, all these things are the industries are very high touch. And then we've got strategies and delivery channels that people are used to that were high touch. And those things have all changed, and how these industries use the delivery channels to make those connections with the audiences are all part of what we're doing for long-term planning right now, is relooking at how we prioritize, how we build trust, and then how do we reach our audiences and our targets. Very
good. Travis, anything else on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could have said it any better about than Christine just said it, about understanding the trends and planning for those evolutions that we've been talking about for the last little bit. The only thing that I'll add is, if it hasn't become painfully clear to everybody that you need a crisis communications plan in the queue, ready to go, it should have. There's nothing else that we can say as a communications professional other than look at the situation we're in right now. So if you don't have a crisis plan, it's not too late. There will be another crisis that we will have to go through, or you will have to go through as a business into the future. So plan for that now. You need to have a crisis plan that identifies these types of potential situations. And can you identify exactly that a COVID-19 will come about again? No, but you can identify business disruptions. You can identify these particular types of issues and plan for them. And now that we've been through this, it's an amazing time to say, okay, let's put our imaginations to work and what could happen to us, and then plan for that. And that way, the next time a crisis rolls around, you're much better prepared to manage it.
Good.
Sure, I'd like to jump in if you don't mind, Bob.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So the simplest thing you can do, because your head could be spinning right now in terms of if you're a business owner or an executive with an agent, with a company. You may or may not have gotten your government funding. There's tons of stress right now, right? So the easiest thing to do to figure out what to do next, as far as your long-term strategy, is to kind of look at some trends. And this was some of the data that I was promising you earlier. So one of the things that's really, really important is if you can look at some of the data, and I'll step aside in just a second, is that if you look at this data, you'll see that, so this is New York Times data that they have here. So these are websites here. You can see that you see a lot of spikes. So YouTube usage off of websites is going very, very much up. This is the app. So as people are in their homes more, as this whole like environment is shifting, what you're seeing is app usage has actually gone down somewhat, and website usage and larger screens is actually going up. There's some other things that are happening in terms of trends that if you can do a good job of plugging into the trends, it'll just make sense to you about how you can, your business or your brand might fit the equation. Like for example, there's this huge trending thing about this Dalgona coffee. Have y'all heard of that one? It's a South Korean coffee that you can make with instant coffee, and it's like a whipped frothy type. It's like a coffee treat. So these big cities have been shut down. So people have been experimenting with ways to make more delicious coffee and things like that. So brands can plug in there, things that they're doing at home, baking bread. Kids activities on Pinterest are up 64%. So if your brand has anything to do with kids or how to enrich a child or your community, your relationship with your kid, Pinterest is a great place to put it. 64% up. Home organization is way up. People are spending more time. If anybody's been to a home improvement store in the last 4 weeks, there's a long line to get into the home improvement store. Other trending things. So this was the one that was really surprising. Pandora, Spotify are actually down 2%, while TikTok is up 48%, and streaming to TVs, so large format like Hulu and Netflix, up over 100% in terms of consumption. And I think the last piece of data here that really helps us understand about what's happening next is to understand a little bit about retail sentiment, right? So that's the most impactful place. When your business requires people to gather, you're the most affected by this whole thing, right? And so this is a survey that shows that this was just taken a couple of weeks ago, and people who are in the industry, they're showing that most everyone thinks we're going to return to normal, in that 3 to 4 month range. Okay, so long-term thinking, that probably would be helpful. And then there's also, we've been doing this long enough where I think some behaviors have really actually changed for the long term. So for example, you've got almost 21% of people think that they're going to go out into retail establishments like grocery stores, restaurants, et cetera, less often after this whole thing's over. So I think the first step in sort of like leveling down in terms of the stress level and figuring out what your next step is go check out some trends in terms of what's happening out there in your industry, lay it all out on the table so that you can assess the information. And then ideally, you'll just naturally kind of figure out, it's like, oh, I've got an opportunity there. I've got an opportunity there. And then you can use that information to move forward.
So I think you just kind of answered the next question. What should a business be doing right now to support their brand? You're saying get data, look at research, follow trends. Would you all agree with that?
Yes, you can never argue being informed by data. It's the foundation of any good, strong strategy for sure. A thing that I would add on to that really is just continuing to show what you're doing to impact the community in a positive way. From what we're seeing, that's what consumers are into. If you're still keeping your channels open and communicating, what can we do to show the value that you can bring to the communities that are so impacted right now? Alcohol and beverage sales are up, and yet Miller Lite has started a campaign where, tip your bartender. Bud Light also has something where they're resurrecting their What's Up campaign from all those years ago. Hopefully everybody remembers that, not just me. And they're using it as a way to reach out to the staggering amount of people that are quarantining solo and the impact that can have on mental health. So they're sending that campaign out with a message to check on those that that are quarantining alone and could be having a hard time mentally dealing with the crisis and the stress.
And I just want to, I want to add to that coming into 2020, one of the trends that we really had our eye on was purpose-driven branding. And so, some of the largest brands have fully moved to purpose-driven branding. Christine has mentioned a few that are relevant right now. And even before, of course, Warby Parker built its business in that manner. Companies like Lululemon and Starbucks, at the forefront. And a lot of the New York agencies have, moved to heavily emphasizing purpose-driven driven branding. And so here we are in this crisis and in this moment where the community needs help, and every brand and every company and every person has a way of adding more purpose to their day and their brand in a really genuine and meaningful way that makes a difference, and then as a story that can be shared. So I think, recognize that anything that we can all do to give back and make a difference, let's all do that, and then let's recognize that can be a part of the overall strategy.
Good. Okay, a question that's come in real quick. Can each panelist tell us one thing that they are doing to communicate with their clients right now? So kind of pull back the curtain on your businesses, and I'm going to go call on each of you in alphabetical order for this one. So the question is, can each of the panelists tell us one thing that they are doing to communicate with their clients right now? So Christine, alphabetically, you're first.
Okay, well, really all the things we've talked about. So, we're a business service organization. So part of business service is relationships. We've got clients, and I can tell you that each account manager is reaching out to our clients very regularly, maybe even more so. And we've gotten creative about the different touch points that we've had, because we're not having those in-person meetings. So we're getting creative about delivery services and just having some fun and making sure that we're scheduling regular updates. As far as channel usage, we're doing everything that we've talked about here. We've got newsletters going out that talk about what we're doing, that show off our services, that show that we are still, putting out great work, that we're fully functional as a remote office. We're updating our website. We're using LinkedIn. So we're using all the channels outside of paid media, I believe, to communicate with our clients, starting with the personal relationships, because in business services, that's really important. And number two, adapting to all the channel usage and digital strategies that we can to keep fostering our relationships.
Perfect. Okay, Cords, you're next. What are you telling your clients right now?
Well, actually, we're doing a ton of what Christina's doing. We have one of the things that we did early on is I mandated it, all the account managers, like, we have to proactively be monitoring the situation and calling outbound our clients anytime something comes up, to just put that in front of our client in case they're too busy paying attention to their business. A lot of times we try to know our clients' businesses better or as well as they do. And so really having the empathy, even if we're just calling them once a week to just hear how things are going, that really makes a big difference. And I think, that personal communication is what's really, really important right now.
Okay, good. David?
And I'll add to that and just say our one thing is really emphasizing the video calls. So our team, we've really strongly emphasized that, like, our team show the video. I know, sometimes people are uncomfortable with showing their video, and emphasizing our team, during those calls, show the video, vice versa. I think our clients maybe were a little uncomfortable at first, but I have also, kind of mostly going with the flow as well. And you can see if you're on a video call just like this and, see several faces, it's a lot more meaningful than the faceless voice on the other end of the phone. And you can see that the folks in the business are engaged, are also caring, and it makes a big difference.
Good. Travis, how about you?
Yeah, in addition to everything that everybody said, we're kind of viewing our role as to help keep everybody focused, right? It's easy to get lost in all the craziness that is happening right now and what you're tied up in, but keeping them focused on what we're trying to achieve, both in the short run and the long run, that's our role. And that's done through, again, all of the platforms that everybody's already been talking about. But one thing that I would encourage everybody to do is take a step from behind the curtain. Don't be afraid to get in front of a camera and do a short video for your social channels, or even a short video for your clients. If you want to send them, it doesn't have to be a live video chat. You can create content very quickly, very effectively that benefits, yes, your clients, but can also benefit the community out there. So you can kind of kill two birds with one stone, or just create content. Ideas, I wrote a blog about this the other day. Ideas can happen anywhere, especially when we're cooped up and we have a lot of time to think. Even if you're busy, you still have time to think. So come up with those ideas that would benefit your clients and create the content and just start creating and get it out there.
Very good. Okay, we are starting to run close on our time. So last question, what resources would you suggest for businesses looking for more based on what we've discussed here today? And I'll just open that up. Raise a hand and I'll call on you. Who'd like to add to that?
For businesses looking for advertising resources, marketing
More
resources.
information based on the ideas you've given them, and where can they go for more information besides contacting each of your companies? David, go ahead.
I can start. So, I mean, generally speaking, HBR is always a good resource if you want to kind of have like a long-term, strategic view and see the trends and see what, some of the largest companies and leaders are doing. The other thing I would say is we've seen a real shift towards time being spent on training. So there are resources out there that maybe you didn't have time for, whether it's Google or HubSpot certifications. There's a lot of training on LinkedIn, and much more of the training is available for free now as well. And so if you do have spare time available, now's a great time to get trained up.
Good.
Yeah, but if I can add just to that, use your professional organizations, your affiliations, and whether that's on the PR front, PRSA, FPRA, whatever your industry organization is that you belong to, use those resources. And like David said, the chances are they're creating content or trying to be helpful in terms of training or resources to get through this crisis. So they're out there, and you're likely already a member of that organization, or if you're not, still they offer plenty of free resources out there. All of us belong to these different reports, these different organizations. So utilize them in the services that they can provide. And like you said, of course, call one of us.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Very good.
One last thing I would just say, it's important and to think about leading with some creativity too. Breaking through the noise and telling an interesting story always relies on creativity. So I would also look out. I agree with everything that David and Travis have said, but I'd say focus on getting to a place in the middle of crisis, in the middle of a lot of pressure, where you can still think creatively and apply some of what you've heard here today to your own business. I think that focusing on the story and how to break through and giving yourself that space to think strategically and creatively is really important.
Very good.
And I'll add to that the last piece. So one of the tools that we use all the time that's a really simple place to get some data is a tool called Google Trends. And if you just go to google.com/trends, you can put in some keywords related to your industry, and you can actually see what happened yesterday and going back years and years in terms of like your business cycle and things like that. So that's a really just a concise place to go and find like what's actually happening to those around you. And of course, check on your competitors, see what they're up to right now, because you could always try to improve upon one of their ideas.
Very good. Well, Travis and David, Cords and Christine, thank you so much for giving us your time to be with us here today. You have shared some great information for our viewers to be thinking about as they look at how they're going to build their brand and communicate who they are, not just today, but as we all work towards getting to back to the normal, whatever that will look like as we go forward. Each webinar we have produced, we have done with the goal of trying to help our members with what we know today, but be preparing for tomorrow. And I think you all have done an excellent job. I'm honored that you joined us here today and were part of this. For anyone watching, if you want to share this information, it will be available on the Tampa Bay Chamber website. We thank you all so much. Everyone, please be safe. Stay up to speed on the announcements coming from our government leaders on how we can get back to business faster and safer, and take all the information you heard today and apply it to your business so you can build your brand to be more successful in the future. Thank you all very much. I appreciate you all being here today. Thank you all for viewing. Everybody have a great day.